Started my first business in 1981. From a very early age, my parents got divorced when I was like 12 years old, and was on my own because our dad, he pretty much abandoned us. And so throughout the years, I found my independence of standing on my own. And so throughout my life, it's just been a journey of having hard times, to figuring out the joy in those times and how do you make the best of them.
Tell your story, tell it loud. Tell your story, let it out. What broke in you can break the chain. What healed your heart can heal the world again.
My name is Vicki Rock, and my story worth sipping is going through the journey of life in joy. And I don't know, I went from being high school to a legal secretary to being a licensed court reporter to owning my own business. And I started my first business in 1981 when there was no such thing as an MBA or anything like that unless you actually went to college. And so I learned most of my experiences from my friends and from the people that I've met throughout life. And it's all about being with a team, having a village, having a whole community, and how can you impact people? How can we be together and learn from each other and really give back to each other? And so I consider myself a servant leader. And I don't like being in the forefront all the time, but I do know that in order to get noticed, you do need to speak up. And from a very early age, my parents got divorced when I was like 12 years old, and was on my own because our dad, he pretty much abandoned us and that kind of thing. And so throughout the years, I found my independence of standing on my own. And so throughout my life, it's just been a journey of having hard times, to figuring out the joy in those times and how do you make the best of them. Because I consider myself like a very serious person. And so I actually thought of going to comedy school or something like that to figure things out. And then I also met a person that we would open up our conversations with the words joy, joy, joy. And that would set the tone for, coming up with happiness or happy things to say, as opposed to complaining about what you do. Throughout my life, I consider myself a lifelong learner. And I've always considered that if you don't have questions, or if you're not willing to learn, you're not very interesting. And talking about yourself, people don't want to necessarily hear about what you are or who you are as much as what do you bring to the table as far as bringing joy to people. Also, there's so many people too, when you're talking to them, especially ending conversations and ending relationships or whatever, talking about the positive things that people bring to my life or to your life. And, ending those conversations with how important those people are to you. When I had my first business, I was doing such a great job that a lot of my people left my business to start their own. And they would tell me, Vicki, you make it look so easy. And so, I just went out and started my own. And after about the third or fourth person, I started thinking, okay, well, I'm going to change my business. I'm going to be, like a school where these people are leaving and they're saying these great things about me and they're starting on their own. They're taking some of my clients. And that was tough, you know? And so I started my business in 1981. And then in 2001, I had a 20-year anniversary, and it was one of the best times because I had invited all my clients, and we did a big thing. It was in Chicago, Illinois, and we did this big thing where we went around to blues bars, and I hired limousines and all of that. Had this wonderful spread in my beautiful office, and it was such a great time, and recognition of the great time. And then 2000, what was it, 2008, the big crash and the challenges that came with that of, throughout my time, everything seemed to be going very well. But then in 2008, with the big crash, my business was cut in half. I was in a 10-year lease, and the building was not accepting any of my calls to help reduce the rent. And a friend walked in, and that I never knew. She was recommended by somebody, and she helped me create a strategic plan. And with that, I started renting out the extra offices, cleaning things up, and all of that. And I met some new great people. And so, learning to pivot, learning to embrace what's going on, and then, the other part is to really recognize what is good in what's happening, Like with COVID, look at COVID and what it did to most of our businesses and the people around us, It's talk about pivot, I had been going downtown since high school up to, 2020, every day, every work day and everything. And when COVID happened, everything's at home. So here I am at my age, learning how to do Zoom and all these other things, but actually creating communities, I learned how to do Zoom. I started bringing family together so that we could see each other that way. And especially my friends and, cohorts and all of those people, highly recommend like businesses having, learning more through organizations that are out there, wonderful organizations. When I started my business, the first organization I began to work with was the National Association of Women Business Owners, NAWBO. That's where I found out how to really choose my bank, how to really work at, building, creating your own village of people, your own team of people, having employees and learning cultures, the different cultures. Oh my gosh. When I started my business, there was a group of us together. There was one woman who came in, and we're all talking about relationships. And that she had a little bruise on her face. We said, Susie, what's going on what's this? She says, well, my husband slapped me. And we're like, why would he slap you? And she says, oh, he slaps me every day. That's his way of telling me he loves me. And we all sat back in amazement that she felt that was a good culture. And it's so hard telling somebody that it's not a good culture. And so that was one of the first things that I realized about so many different cultures with religion, with, just whatever. And running a small business, oh my God, it's just like having a family. The business owner brings their culture into the business as they do with their family, as far as supporting each other, raising each other up, all of those things. And it's really interesting to acknowledge that as you go along, Another, big word for me too is grace and forgiveness. I was a court reporter, and so as a court reporter, we have to take down the minutes of meetings or the depositions and verbatim and things like that. And we were taking a doctor's deposition, and the doctors get paid to get their deposition taken, and we take it down. One of my employees turned off the equipment and lost everything during this 2-hour deposition. And I had to go to the client and say, this is what happened. And that never happened to me before. And I had no idea how to explain this because we had to recreate the deposition for this case that we were on. And I finally, I prayed a lot about it and went to the attorneys and said, I'm asking for grace. And you know, when you're authentic and when you're in a situation like that, when these things happen, you're at your most vulnerable and humble position, such that people really can feel you. And in today's times, you know, being in the experience as we roll is so important because our time is so important. So at my age right now, I'm in I sold my business in 2018 to another huge corporation. But before I did, I used all my experience as a court reporter to learn from the best of the best of attorneys that are litigators that really know how to do opening statements and closing arguments and all of that. And so I went through the Goldman Sachs 10,000 Small Businesses program, and out of that, you create a growth opportunity. And from there, I started teaching attorneys, younger attorneys, how to do a pitch. And so once I sold my business, court reporting business, I started really getting into teaching people how to pitch their business. And so today I work with people and making them feel comfortable enough to pitch or talk about their business in a way that, you know, really gets people's attention. So, and now I consider myself starting down my last chapter. I'll put it that way. People ask me, Vicki, when are you going to really slow down? And I am still learning so much and still spending time with my friends and acquaintances in, you know, figuring out how can I impact their life? How can I bring the best of the best out of people? How can I leave people in a state of gratitude and abundance and love and caring? Because that's all we really want, you know? It's, yeah, leading by example. I mentioned, you know, servant leadership. I don't like being in the forefront. I'm great at helping other people with their pitch, but even doing my own, I struggle with that. Other than my court reporting, I've got that down, but even for my own business. The other thing I'm doing now is helping people. Have you heard of such a thing called executive presence? And so I'm working with people in their executive presence. Just the other night, I came across an artist, and she's doing fairly well. But when she's getting people asking for her paintings and stuff, that they want her to put her paintings in their galleries, but they don't invite her to be at the shows. And so she was like, I don't understand. Why don't they invite me to be there? And I talked to her and I said, you know, are you dressing the part? Are you dressing like an artist, or are you dressing like one of them to, you know, to dress up and be able to stand next to these people and stuff? And so, her eyes opened up a little bit, and start working with her on, you know, her executive presence so that she gets attention and she's viewed as a peer and not just a worker, you know. So that's one of them. And I'm also working with someone else that unconsciously, when she disagrees with someone, she rolls her eyes. And so we're working with that. You know, there's so many things we do unconsciously. And so I just love getting the experience of being with people and helping raise them up. So, yeah.
Tell your story. What broke in you can break the chain.